Well, hello and welcome. Welcome to I want a scrapbook, but where do I actually start? Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see you. Thank you for hopping on today, joining me to really dig in a little bit more about how to start scrapbooking, or if you're scrapbooking, kind of your strategy about how to scrapbook. And most importantly, I think it's about time that I came back around and talked about the lessons I've learned and really kind of what I wish I knew before I started scrapbooking. Woo, about 30 years ago. Now it's been a while. So that is what we're going to talk about today. And thank you so much for joining in. Carolyn's here, Christina, Bunny's here, Linda, Mary, and Shannon, Victoria, Gwen, Crystal, Kelly. Oh, so good to see you. Deb's here, Diane, Rachel. So this is really going to be kind of an overview about scrapbooking. This may be, if you're an old pro, this may ring some bells for you. But if you're new or you're interested or just kind of rethinking your strategy, maybe you might find some good tips and thoughts about scrapbooking in this video. So really, what I want to do today is talk about what I wish I knew before I started scrapbooking, before I started gathering all of this you see in my scrap room. What is it like? What is that big picture that I wish I knew before I started on my scrapbooking journey? So welcome. Thank you everyone for saying hello. It's so good to see you. Jean's here, Julie, Margarita, Karen. Love seeing all your names. Thanks for joining in. Okay, so what I want to do is actually just jump right in. And if you are new here to either Facebook or YouTube, and you're looking to find like, who is this Lauren lady? I know I just put this up on the screen, but this is where you can find me. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and then that is my Creative Memories link as well. But let's jump in and just talk about first scrapbooking. So one of the things that when I started, when I think back, it was 1995, I believe, is when I went to my first home class. And, way back then, that's kind of when we, had to know somebody who knew somebody, and we ended up at a home class. And then, the lights went off and it's like, oh, this looks like so much fun. And, the scrapbooking adventure began for me. Now, this was before I had kids. This was, I was newly married, and my mom is the one who actually found the class, and we went together to take this first class. And I was just like, wow, this is so fun. And I mean, how many of you, do you guys remember doing your first page? If you've already scrapbooked, do you guys remember that moment when you were like, wow, I get it. Do you? So that's always kind of a fun thing to think about. And what I want to do is encourage anybody who hasn't had that aha moment, but who may be looking at scrapbooking like, I don't want all that stuff, or I don't know, it's like, I don't know if I want to commit to that. I don't know if I want to invest in that. But let's talk a little bit about strategy and the types of albums and all those different things. So let's begin first. And it's one of my favorite quotes. Begin with the end in mind, or let's start with the big picture. And to me, this is what I wish I had really, somebody sat me down and said, Lauren, we really have to talk about the big picture with you. Like, what is it that you want to accomplish with your scrapbooking? And you know what? There's as many reasons to scrapbook as there are scrapbookers, right? Like we all have our own different reason for getting to play with paper and stickers, but there's also some kind of foundational questions that I think we need to ask if we're going to take this journey into scrapbooking. So, one of those questions is first, what is most important to you? If you had to grab an album off a shelf, if you had one album that was sitting on your shelf, what album would you want to be full of photos and stories? And what would you want to take off the shelf to share with others? And that's a really powerful and important question. But there's also a second question that goes along with that. Excuse me one second. I had to grab something. And that second question is, what is most important to those you love? Now, let's talk a little bit about what I mean by those questions. So if you were to picture, and some of us might have shelves full of albums, but if you are kind of that beginner, what would you like to see? If you had to grab something and share that, like what is that album? Is it a history, a genealogical, let me say that word again, a representation of your life and your family? Is it something about your kids? Is it their record of their lives? Is it your vacations? Is it a theme album, like a Christmas album, birthday album, Halloween album, right? People we love album? Or is it just like a chronology, a representation of the life that you've lived over time? And it can be start going back from the beginning or start today and move forward and then go back. Like, what is it that you would want to pull off the shelf? Because that's always what I like to encourage somebody to think about. And also that not only do we have different things that are important to us, but then the second question I put up there, which is, what is most important to the people we love? So in other words, and I've had to ask myself this question quite a bit. I think, my kids should have 20 albums of each one of them, each child, and I have 4 children, should have 20 albums of all their pictures and all their things. And I look at them and I think about them, and I've actually talked with them and I like, do you want these? And it's interesting what their answer is. Like, they enjoy looking at those albums, say, in my house, but they haven't committed to the idea that that is something that they will take with them. So when we are creating for other people, namely children, family members, so on and so forth, I think the communication process is extremely important to say, hey, what would you like? Do you want just a couple albums that have the most important highlights of your life in it? And sometimes the kids nowadays, maybe they're saying, yeah, that's all I want. I don't want volumes and volumes. I don't want all these, heavy 12 by 12 albums that I have to figure out where I'm going to put them, where I'm going to store them. And that to me is what's happening and hitting close to home. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures. And the first picture is, what does that look like? So if you have albums that are about your kids, is it an all about album? What does that look like? What is that what physical space? I think this is a very important question we don't often talk about as scrapbookers. What physical space will those albums take up? And to me, that's a very important question, because then it really does tie into how we approach our album projects. So there you can see that's a picture of one of the shelves of my bookcase that has just one of my children's albums. If I had to start over, that's my question. What have I learned? I would have done those albums very differently. I would have really curated the photos that I wanted to put in there and made each double page spread a lot different, a lot more special. Instead of, and who's with me on this one? I have to scrapbook every photo. When I started, that was my mindset. I have to scrapbook every photo, and not just every photo, but the doubles and triplicates, right? Because, oh, I have to get more than one photo because I have to put one in my family album, and then I have to put one in my kids album. And then what if I have two kids, and what if it's a picture with both of those kids in it? Then I have to get triples, and I have to put one in my family and one in my kids and one in the other kids. And that was exhausting. The thought of having to keep up with that amount of photos was exhausting. And that was when it was film. What about when the digital revolution hit, right? Then we've got all these photos on our devices, on our phone, on our computer, and so forth. And then I feel like many of us would probably also feel the photo taking exploded. Again, another reason to say, what do I want to curate? What are the photos that are most important? There is no way that I know, me personally, I cannot scrapbook every photo. And letting that go was so wonderful. It was so freeing to say, whew, yeah, I really don't. So when we take a look at that, and then I want to show you a couple other pictures. So then we go, well, then also, yeah, what is important to us? So if we have spaces on our bookcase, what is the dream? What do we want to see there? Is it vacations? To me, these albums are some of my most looked at, most loved albums. Our trips when we were together as a family or before we were family and different things, our trips, that is such a wonderful expression of what we did together. And, these are huge investments in money, time, the whole thing too. It's so great to be able to have something to remember those trips and vacations. Now, let's also take a look at family. Okay. The physical space. What I learned when I first started, I've got to scrapbook every photo. And I went from years that were one volume. And then those volumes got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I ended up popping when the kids got, we had more kids and more kids. And then I popped into 2 volumes for every year. And the physical space started giving me panic. Okay. The physical space that all those albums took up started giving me panic. And you see all those albums, mostly all of those albums are completed. I have chunks of albums that as I was raising my family, I just skipped years, moved on. But those are yes, they are wonderful representations of my family. If I were to do it over again, I would be more selective of the photos that I put in my albums. And how I do that is really kind of reflected in my most current type of scrapbooking. And I just actually put a video up on YouTube that really highlights that. And so what I'm doing now, and of course, we also have to say there's seasons in our life, there's changes. When our kids are younger, our album making looks at one way, but as they get older, it will look very differently, right? If they're living with us, if they're not living with us. And so this, I just did, the video is a flip through of my 2022 family album. So you can see this album. There we go. That's it. That's the whole year in one album. And I was very careful to curate the most important photos to go in my family album. And I did a combination of big moments that happen in our family with everyday moments. So if you want more about that, just check out my YouTube channel. And it's it is the last video that I uploaded. So you can check that out. But my album making has come a long way since then, because you might go, but Lauren, what about all those, little trips, weekend trips? Or I live in California. We're right here in LA area. We have the Dodger Stadium, literally 20 minutes from us. So we go to Dodger games. But what I realized, and this kind of goes into my pop series. So if some of you have found me or understand or have watched my Progress on Projects series, this is really kind of that, okay, that I started that series 4 years ago almost. Where are we now? Where are we in the picture now? And what I've learned is that even library of memories, even, when I was so gung-ho and saying, okay, I've got to put all these into library memories, my thinking now is still, I need to be a curator of photos. So it's not, how should I say this? I don't want to just say, I still have this mountain of photos and I'm going to take some and not put them in my family album and put them in library of memories albums, because then I'm back in the same situation where I'm overwhelmed and I have too many photos to put in too many places. So again, the key is really be a curator and find your best photos. And then you decide on the types of albums that you want to create. So let's talk a little bit about that. So when I think of albums as projects. Yep, that's why I call my series Progress on Projects, because we all have different ways of and different ideas of what we want to see, right? So if we look at the types of projects, we can start categorizing scrapbooking into different areas. Family, I showed you pictures. Family, chronological albums, kids albums, vacations. You could do library of memories, which is people we love, places we go, things we do, all about us. I love doing pet albums. I love doing all those theme albums, really have a special place for me. I love theme albums. I do a daily December Days album. So what is it that is important to you? What would you like to see? And then once we decide on the type of project you want to create, then we can start looking at the type of album. And so there's a lot of choices out there on the types of albums. So what I want to do is kind of flip over to my overhead camera so we can take a look at some of those and talk a little bit more about the types of albums. So this is what we're going to do. Types of albums. And as I've mentioned, for some of you, you might go, oh, I already know this. I do this. I know this. And that is fabulous. That is great. And I am missing one of my albums. I'm going to come back and I'll find that. Okay. So let me switch over. Here we go. Okay. So I actually found, this is a 7x7. This is an 8x8, but I wanted to bring this in because I have kind of a little something I wanted to tell you about this. and the smaller albums. We have, this is a 12 by 12. This was the original 7 by 7, but right now what we have at Creative Memories is the 8 by 8. And then this is the Happy album. So you can kind of see, I'm just going to take that one out for a second, but you can kind of see the different types of albums. And the one that I'm missing, I just thought I pulled it off my shelf, is my paper album. And so I am not sure what I did with my paper album. Okay. Really thought I had that one handy. Okay. So we're going to just go with it. Where's my paper album? I don't know. Okay. Well, let's just, we can come back to that. So 12 by 12 is our traditional album. We have 8 by 8 and then the Happy album, which is, I think it's got kind of an odd dimension, 6 and something by 9, something like that. Okay, so when we think about the types of projects, we can also think about what kind of album do we want to put those in. And that to me is really important to think about how we approach all of the different things we want to do. So if you have, say, you want to make a gift, or if you have a theme and it's something that you want to kind of contain in a smaller album, you might consider an 8 by 8. And this is one that I did, and I have a video on this. And so this is a Thanksgiving album. So I started this in 2021, and I absolutely love it. It's something that I can grab and I put out at the table during Thanksgiving. And I see I haven't printed my 2022 photo yet from Thanksgiving, but what I did is I passed around the album during Thanksgiving. And so the folks that were there joining us wrote notes directly in my album, which I loved. And so this is something I just want to continue through the years and add those photos. So 2022 will have the photos just like this one, and share those, very small contained ideas and memories. So you can do it in these smaller format albums. And I should say, I have a link to a lot of these different videos. I have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel now, but what I did is I curated a list for you if you're interested in some of these smaller format albums. I have links in the description of this video, so you can go in and actually check out certain videos that I'm talking about, so you can go in there and click on those. And I also have playlists, so you can check that out. So the smaller format, even though this was done in a 7 by 7, I also think that there is a time and place to make these wonderful small gifts for folks. And this is one that I did for my daughter, who is now 26. But when I did this was for, let's see, her 9th birthday. Okay. And it was an all about you, I love you type book. So it was just a combination of photos from her across the years. And then I wrote all the things that I loved about her. So when you have a small book like this, I think these, even though this may not have a place necessarily on, that gets used at the time, at the moment that I gave her this and that she had this, it was such a wonderful gift. Whether it ends up being something that she continues to look back, that's okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes we give gifts and projects that may be validated or used at a certain point in someone's life. And that can enrich their life and enrich that moment of their life exponentially. But it's okay for us to realize as album makers that it might not be something that they look at over, 26 years later. Maybe that's not her favorite album. Maybe it is, but you just never know. So what I'm trying to say is that don't don't let that stop you. If you're like, well, I don't know if I want that to have a place on my shelf. Sometimes the smaller time frame of giving that album as a gift is beneficial. So another thought is this album that I created. So this is done in the happy album size. And I do have this video linked as well of how I created this this album for my daughter Audrey. And again, it's a similar to this, so it was a different idea, but similar. And this was when, I wanted to create an album for her when she graduated from high school, especially because her graduating class was the class of 2020. And that was quite a challenge for us, right? So I wanted to have a special memento because she was in such a challenging year to look back on all the things that happened in her life and during her school years and have something to give her when she graduated. And she absolutely loved this album. So it's very kind of organic and just, pictures from all across time throughout the album. And we also included pictures that of when she was young, family pictures, and also notes. So there's a lot of peekaboo pockets in this album. But the size of this was so great because she could just take this in her lap and just grab it and see all the photos that we had through the years with her. And it's a great representation of her life. And so sometimes I think we can look at our kids and go, this might be enough. This type of album might be enough. Just a book that she can have and look back at all the different things that went on. I had her friends in here. I had her friends write some notes and send some letters that I included in her album. I had her grandma and her grandpa and her aunties and uncle, and then myself and my husband. We all wrote notes. And so she has just this wonderful representation of her life kind of up into her graduating high school adventure. And I tucked in her ID cards in the back of the book in a little peekaboo pocket. So that could also be enough for some people. This smaller format could be enough. So, Lori, this is the happy album size. So I want to say, where are my happy album photo pages? They're like 6.5. Let me see. I have a pack here. Here we go. They are 6.5, 6 and 7, 6 3/4 by 10. So they're 6 3/4 by 10. These are the refill pages, and they have different size covers. But yeah, isn't that just kind of a great little size that you can create? So what I want, what I'm trying to share and what I'm trying to show is that you don't have to do 12 by 12s, right? You can create in other sizes. And the questions again to ask is what's most important? And this album did take a lot less time than a 12 by 12 album did to create because, there's just a lot less to put on the pages, right? And it was very fun to just actually kind of try to fit as many photos on these pages as I could. So this was a really, really fun album to do. And like I said, I do have a video that takes you in a little more detail through this. So this is the happy album. And then we go into the 12 by 12, right? So as I mentioned, I did do a video on this album, but my current style of scrapbooking is very much curating those photos to just documenting the big moments that happen in our family. So those are holidays and birthdays and significant moments for us. And then I also have room in this book and in my album where I want to talk about the story. And that's again how my album making changed over time, is that with the kids that are now older, there are stories that I wanted to capture of everyday things that were happening in our lives. And so that's how come I put these smaller multi-pocket pages to capture these smaller stories across time that happened in the different months. So you can kind of see that. Once again, I went into a lot more detail in my last video about this album style, but it's very different. It's very different. So it's a picture and then like kind of what was happening, but then I mix that right back into our bigger moments like Mother's Day and what that event was like for us and our family. Okay, so those are the sizes I kind of wanted to share with you. Now, there also is the paper album, which I cannot believe I don't have it. It was right here, and I don't know what happened. It was right here in my album, and now it's not. So the paper album is a whole new process. Let me just kind of talk about the paper album. Is a whole new way of scrapbooking for us, where we can actually even digitally create a small 8x8. So it's the 8x8 size, this size. And if you saw my video, I did a whole paper album about my trip to Minnesota in January. And it escapes me where that is. But I'll have to make sure I link the video so you can see that one. So that is also, again, a very small kind of project that you can use for those paper albums. So you have two choices with that one. You can print your photos. And when I printed mine, they were small, little 2x3s. Or you can also have Creative Memories print, and they send you the paper album with your photos already printed on them, which is really exciting. I haven't done that yet, but I'm working on that one. Okay, so I hope that was kind of a little bit to give you an idea of these types of projects, right? That's one thing that, think about. What are the types of projects? How do I want to approach them? And then the size. To me, the size is really important of what you're going to create with. And then once you've actually determined that, then you can take your steps forward to actually purchasing and getting your products. But I really feel that you should take that time to do a little thinking and ask yourself those questions. How much space do I have in my house? What kind of space do I want to devote? For the people I'm giving these, beautiful works of love to, what are they really going to want? Are they going to want, stacks and stacks of albums that they have to find a place for? Or are they going to want, something smaller and more curated for them? Okay, I'm going to jump in and take a look at the questions, and hopefully if you have a question, I'm going to just scroll through. Hopefully I can find them all. And thank you for writing question or Q in the chat. But I do also have a couple other things I want to go through, but I do want to take a minute here. Okay. And Christina says she scrapbooks for herself, and she's made her 24-year-old son's albums. Now she just scrapbooks for me, which is absolutely fantastic. And that is, like I said in the beginning, we all have different reasons for scrapbooking. And for some of us, it is just the craft. It is so fun to play with paper and stickers. And then for others, I know there is a real drive to get history down and to get that genealogy and, kind of document your life. So all of those things are important, and all of those reasons are fabulous reasons to scrapbook. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Let me just see if I have any in the chat that I missed. Okay. All right. If you have a question, pop it up in the chat now if I missed it earlier, because I could have missed it earlier. There was a lot going on, and it's so fun to see you guys checking in with each other. I love that. So, and Deborah says she gave a 7x7 album as a gift for a very close friend, and she said it was the best gift she'd ever received. Isn't that awesome? So sometimes that is the reason we scrapbook, right? Is to give that amazing gift to other people. So yes. Okay. And Mary Lou says, normally I do 2-page spreads and 12x12 albums. Exactly. But I also kind of want you to think, yeah, there's a lot of different formats. Now, I should mention too, I'm a Creative Memories girl. Like, I love Creative Memories albums, but I know there's a lot of different albums out there on the market. I've just chosen those products because I love the quality of Creative Memories products, but there might be other albums out there that you feel more drawn to. So that could be an 8.5x11 size album. I know a lot of folks scrapbook in that, or, maybe some other, maybe more of a long type album. So whatever you start with, the biggest question, no matter what you decide, is think about the big picture. To me, that is just the key question. What is the end result going to look like? What is your bookshelf going to look like? And for me, that was a big question. And for some of you, it may not matter. Like, you might have all different size albums and all different types of albums. You might have 3-ring and strap, the Creative Memories albums and all different types. And that might just be perfect for you. But I think it's also important for us to take that minute and ask, really, what do I want to see as that big picture, right? So if I go back to my bookshelf and see all these albums lined up, like, when I saw those, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't want to run out of room. Like, I can't imagine having more room dedicated just to scrapbooks than what I have. I have one wall and one wall in our living room, which is where our albums live. And for me to think, oh, I'm going to expand that, I don't want to do that, right? Because I feel like instead, what I need to do again is curate those photos so that the end result, right, is what I want it to be. That big picture, what I look at on that living room wall, what do I want to see? And then also, as I give those away to my kids, what do they want? What do they want to see? Okay, so that's projects and types of albums. So I can't talk about beginner scrapbooking, right, until I also talk about supplies. And supplies to me are, kind of a loaded question, because I love them. I love it all. But I realize for a lot of us starting out, like, I didn't have it all when I was first starting. And so I want to just take a minute and talk about, you don't have to start with everything. But what are some of those must-have items that I think are the most important? And this is where I would love to see you guys put in the chat what you think are the must-haves when you started scrapbooking? Come on, let's put them in the chat. Let's see if we're thinking alike. What are your must-haves when you started scrapbooking? And let's see if they're the same as mine. Okay. Ta-da! Personal trimmer. So if you're going to cut photos, you're going to need a personal trimmer, right? And then the trimmers. The trimmers have it for me. Like, they're top on my list. And the 12 by 12 trimmer, right? So personal trimmer for cutting photos, 12 by 12 trimmer for cutting all the other things, all the paper and different things in as we're creating. I have to say, probably number 2 on my list, I don't know, is repositionable adhesive. Anybody else have that up there on their list? I love the Creative Memories repositionable adhesive. This is my favorite. I love all their adhesives, but these two, not that one, that's the vellum, but the regular and the repositionable are my go-to adhesives, and a bunch of refills. Those are definitely high on my list. And Jean, yeah, oh, she put the multi-purpose tool. Definitely. What a great, it's a small investment, but such a great tool. Okay. And Shannon, the right photos. I'm going to come back to photos in just a second because that is so, so important. Mona says trimmer, adhesive, album. Right. Trimmers are number 1. Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. So then, exactly number 3 on my list were the albums. Then you pick which album is going to work the best for the project you want to start. And then I'm with you, whoever wrote in and said pens. I saw that in the chat, but you can have as many pens as you like. I have a whole box full of pens, but really a good black fine tip pen. This is a dual tip, so it's fine tip and a broad tip on both ends. I mean, you have to have a good pen. And then let's see, what else did I have? And then so I'm kind of going in the hierarchy. So once you have those, then you can do the accessories, right? So to me, after that, then is you could make albums with your photos, an album, a black pen, adhesives, and a trimmer, right? Like, we could make albums that way. But then we want to get into all the fun stuff, right? Like Bunny says, the border maker, right? So then you can get into all the fun tools. But if you are just starting, think about those must-haves first, and then get into all the decorative supplies. So all of those wonderful paper packs and collections and cardstock that you see behind me, and then all the tools, the border maker cartridges and the punches, right? Like, those are just so much fun to have available to create with. And also your scissors and all those other great tools and products to have. So once you have kind of your basics, those things that are just going to make your scrapbooking so much easier, then you can focus on expanding your collection. So along with that, what I want to mention is, once you do start growing your supply, your craft room, your scrapbooking stash, it is important to be organized. And so I want to just mention here, a lot of you already know I do Tidy Up Tuesdays, where we go through and talk about how do we store all the things. And I left a link in the description again on how to find those videos. But every Tuesday at noon, I go live and we talk about something around organization, because to me, organization goes hand in hand with scrapbooking, because we need to find this stuff in order to create this with the stuff. And part of that is using photo folders and having our pictures organized. So I have also a link to the video where I talk about the photo folders and how I organize my photos. I'll just turn my box right here is full of photo folders ready to go. So I know the next group of photos that I want to scrap with is ready, sitting right next to me, and I can grab those, pick the photos out, curate those photos, and then create my pages. So that's just the box that I'm currently working on. And those photo folders, the right photos, right? And be selective because we don't have to scrapbook all the photos. I release you. I release you from having to scrapbook all the photos. Okay, so Julie said she started her best friend bought her 12-inch trimmer, personal trimmer, custom cutting system, circles. Oh yes, thank you for mentioning that. Pen, repo adhesive, regular adhesive, and a collection or two and an album. So there's a great like knock it off list. Here you go. Start with this. Right? And Debbie's asking, what do you use the thicker end of the pen for? I always go dry on the fine tip and I have all these pens with the broad tip. I know. Debbie, I'm going to answer that question because I have been working on a new Love Your Lettering class, which is where I'm going to go into the details of how to use the thicker end. But basically, I use that for titles and for kind of setting apart different words in my journaling. But I'll have lots of tips for you in that. So stay tuned. Love Your Lettering is coming back to Craft Some Joy. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions that popped up? Let me see. I know. Yeah, you guys got it. Must have good adhesive, multi-purpose tool, border maker, the albums, paper, all those good things. And Patty says that is her big issue is photo organizing. And I agree. And so I have a video just on that, just on organizing your photos. And that's in the description. I have that linked. Okay. So, okay, good. Glad you're looking forward to that, Debbie. We'll do some lettering tips and tricks for you. So I have a lot up my sleeve for that. And Kelly says, yes. Thank you, Kelly, once again. After all these years of scrapbooking that I don't have to scrapbook all of my photos, I release all of you from having the feeling that you have to scrap all your photos. To me, it's much more fun to just think about those bigger moments and what is most important to you, going back to those core questions. What's most important to me and what's most important to the people I love? Basically, who you create for, right? And then we create our albums and our scrapbooks around those and the answers to those questions. Okay. Woo! We talked about a lot. I talked about a lot. I talked about a lot. So let me just pop in here and say, are there any other questions? If you're a beginner, I know most of you, I know you guys, and I know that you're not new and you've been doing this, so you probably could talk about all these things just as much as I could. But you let me know if there's anything else that that you think is important when you are what you wish you knew. What did you wish you knew before you started scrapbooking? And yeah, I think part of that really is getting clear on what kind of album projects are most meaningful to you and giving yourself that grace to say, it's okay, even if I started, this is another thing I wanted to mention, is you saw those pictures of my albums and I'll show it to you one more time. And I can look at that and go, wow, I wish I had done things differently. I wish I didn't, have so many photos and so many albums and I had been more selective so that my albums would be smaller and it just didn't feel so overwhelming. But what I have learned is you have to give yourself grace. So if you started one way, that doesn't mean you have to continue in that same type of scrapbooking. And that was my big aha is I could not continue creating 2 volumes for every year of our family's life because I would have 3 walls in my living room filled with albums, and that would just feel too overwhelming. So, the other thing I want you to think about too, and I like to use this as an example, is I'm not saying that all those photos are not going to get captured somewhere, but when you think about that wall of albums, sometimes what's been helpful for me as I'm thinking, what pictures do I want to put in my family album, right? So what do I want to go in here? This is my thought is those are my family's big moments. And like I said, I included everyday moments, those little fun stories that I wanted to remember. So that's for me. That's definitely for me. But it's also our big moments. And what are those? Again, birthdays, the events, the holidays that we celebrate, those big meaningful things that happen. So if I went, for instance, I'm going to bring up the Dodger game again. If I went to the Dodger game in 2022, it's not necessarily in my album, or maybe it's just a little tiny picture in the everyday moments where maybe I have enough photos that I could do either a 1-page or a 2-page spread of who I went to the Dodger game with. What I've decided are those kind of events, and this is what I talk about in my pop series, are things that I want to see curated together so I can make these across time connections. So instead of having an album with, maybe I did a Dodger game in 2022 and then, did we go to the Dodgers in 2011? How about 2016? I don't remember. Would you have to pull off each one of those albums and flip through them and go, when did we go to the Dodgers? Or would it be more fun to have either, a smaller album or just one curated album of all our Dodger games throughout the years? And to me, when I think about that, that is what brings me more joy, is to see an album where I can go back and go, oh my gosh, look at how young we were here. Oh yeah, I remember we went with so-and-so and so-and-so to that game. And oh yeah, remember when we went with your parents to this game? And just have one album where I can curate those photos. So I hope that can give you an idea of why I have streamlined down my family photos so that, it's not just chronology of everything we did, but rather let's take a closer look at some of those events and say, how can we make that more meaningful in a different way? And that's what I love about the whole library of memories idea is that you can gather those photos, grab that one book and take a look at that. So if it's a pets album, it's not that you have pets, throughout different years and pages and, which album has which pictures of my pets. No, I've got a whole album of my pets, or I have a whole album of what's another one we could Disneyland or Disney World or theme parks. I have a whole album of Christmases. That's another really popular idea, is just to take that chunk of photos and put them together so that you can look at that across time. Okay, so does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Were there more questions? Rustic nature. I started scrapbooking 25 years ago with Creative Memories, but then stopped for quite a while. I have the old green 12 by 12 and want all of my albums to match. Oh, want all of your albums to match. Yeah, the old green. I know. I have them too. I have one right here. And they don't make this color anymore. Right? Evergreen? Does that look familiar? So I switched. I took I decided I took 1 year. It was I think 2010. And so I just took a year and I said, okay, I'm switching. And I went from green to the black. And so there's just a break, and that's the way it is. But the only place you're going to find those older albums would be in ISO group, in search of groups, or on, aftermarket, eBay, those kind of things. So unfortunately, they do not have a color that is close to this green at all that I know of. Okay. So I just switched to black, and that's another thing. I wish I had knew. I wish I had started. Black is such a, just classic color. And then I know some people who want one of every color. And so that's a thing too, right? Okay. Shannon says she's getting back into scrapbooking, and it was a request that her mother made. And she is dyslexic and struggles with journaling. Picking photos is also hard. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think maybe what might help is to, get an app on your phone where you could just type things out that maybe that you want to put in, and then copy it. That might be helpful. And then picking photos, I think for a lot of us, and maybe I'll just kind of add this in at this point, the more we watch people do, and that was one of the reasons I started my channel way back in 2019, was so people could kind of go, oh, yeah, Lauren has kind of a simpler, easier way of scrapbooking. I don't do all the, super 1-2 pictures per page. I have my formula of how I like to scrapbook. And it's okay to create simpler albums. So what I'm saying is watching people, getting inspired, and that's my last kind of part for you is definitely after supplies, is that you need, thank you for the segue, inspiration, right? You need that inspiration, and to help and watch other people create. So, whoops, wrong one. So whatever style that appeals to you, and maybe it's not my style, maybe it's someone else's style, watch and learn, and watch and learn, and keep watching. And so I do that every Friday night, for Friday night scrapbooking. Every other Friday, we go live here on Facebook and YouTube. So I think that to me has been key in learning, is watching and kind of understanding how someone, especially if you get someone who's a good teacher, they can say, oh, I put this here because of this, and I put that there because of that, right? And that gives you things to think about as you're creating. Okay. And Yudi asks, have you tried doing a splash of ink on your pages? What do you use? Oh, that's more of a technique. We'll have to try that like during Friday night scrapbooking. Okay. Let's see. She also, Yudi, you also said, I stopped scrapbooking for a while and tried card making. I like cards, but it's quick satisfaction. Scrapbooking is filling your heart with happy memories that last a lifetime. I could not agree more. And that's why I dabble a little bit in cards, but if I'm going to take the time, if I'm going to invest in fun products and different things, it's going to be for my albums for sure. Yes. I agree. And yep. And Jennifer said she also types her journaling out on the Notes app, and that's such a great app. Just easy. Okay. Right. Oh, Joe, great tip. What applies to photos also applies to memorabilia, right? I mean, that is also so important. And I give you permission to take pictures and throw things away that are too bulky and too big and other things to keep. And, you know, if it's a card and you're wondering, like, who is this person who gave me the card? Toss it. You don't need it. You don't have to keep it. Thank you, Joe, for that reminder. Memorabilia is just as important to curate and keep only what's important as our photos. So absolutely agree. And Julie says she likes her albums different colors. As kids, we always knew that pictures were in the flower album, or that the was the brown album, etc., etc. Yeah, and that's a great way to remember specific albums for sure. Yeah. And Nancy says she wished she had written the date on the back of older photos. Yeah. Yeah. I know. The palest ink is better than the sharpest memory. Is that how that quote goes? Right. So I know sometimes, you know, long ago when we had our photos, there were no dates and we couldn't just look them up on our phone, right? We had to, it's hard sometimes to know where those came from. Okay, Kathy says CM currently has a hunter green, but I'm not sure it will be around forever. Yeah, and it's a little different color. But if you just kind of like the green idea, that would be definitely an option for sure. Okay. Woo! How do you guys think? How are you feeling? Any other questions? So definitely, you know, kind of to wrap up is look for, once you've, you know, kind of thought about what your most important things are, then, you know, I absolutely encourage you to find inspiration. There are so many talented people here on YouTube, and I have added those playlists and different ways you can watch how I've been scrapbooking on this platform for, like I said, since 2019. So, you know, there's a lot to watch. And sometimes, as I mentioned, just watching gives you that confidence that you can do it too. And that scrapbooking doesn't have to be hard, that it can be definitely something to enjoy and look forward to. Okay, so you are welcome. Let's see, moss green. Oh, discontinued. Okay. Seeing other people's ideas and layouts is great. Yes. Thank you, Mary. Okay. So if you have more questions, I would love to answer those and let me know what you find. If you're struggling to get started, what are questions that you might like to get answered? And if I need to do another one of these, we can do that again. But hopefully I've kind of encouraged you to think maybe a little bit outside your box, a little bit outside of traditional chronological scrapbooking, because that can just be a huge weight lifted when you can say, hey, yeah, you know, I can think about how I scrapbook a little differently. Okay, so if there's any questions, like I mentioned, just leave those in the comments. Love to hear your thoughts and ideas and what you're struggling with. And thank you all for being here with me today. And it's always so great to see your names. Big hugs to you. And don't forget to check out the description for all those links and more ideas and inspiration. And thank you so much for all of you. I love seeing those thumbs up and hearts. That just brings me so much joy. So thank you for doing that. Okay, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will be back in touch soon. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.